And this is the reason we've been here to hold the IMF and the World Bank accountable. And the accountability has been in us presenting cases, presenting evidence, establishing facts, bringing about empirical evidence, talking about case studies. Many countries we've mentioned here, from Tunisia to Ghana, to Nigeria, to Kenya, to South Africa, to Angola, to Malawi, we've been showing, demonstrating the impact of IMF policies, World Bank design programs, the impact that they have had in these countries. And we've been able to link this to the poor performance of the countries when it comes to eradicating poverty. So we've tried to establish that these policies, these economic and fiscally designed policies brought about by IMF and World Bank, have engineered extraction of the continent. And this extraction has resulted in revenue degeneration of our continent. So this tribunal here, what we're also calling the Commission of Inquiry, has been to bring about this scenario so that we can then have a finding from the people, the voices of Africans, to say that what we want out of the IMF and the World Bank are certain recommendations, are certain strategic policy moves that we want correction. So that's the reason that we've been here. And I'm going to now pass on the mic to my counterpart, Diana, to give us more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leila. My name is Diana Geshengo, an advocate in Kenya, but I lead the Institute for Social Accountability as the Executive Director and convene Okoa Uchumi Campaign, coalition of citizen and civil society in Kenya who are reeling from the effect of debt. As have been stated, we've been here for the last 2 days together as the people of Africa, and because the people of Africa understand that international financial institutions, in addition to our political leaders, are responsible for the mess that we find ourselves in economically, and because everything we have, our political system, our social systems, our economic systems, and therefore all our human rights are financed by money in the form of taxes and debt. When countries have high indebtedness due to the bad policies and the neoliberal approaches of institutions like IMF and the World Bank, then we are very sure we are almost headed back to slavery. And based on that particular process, and as somebody who back home has tried to hold the IMF accountable in vain, we are called for meetings when they are doing their assessment, their monitoring reviews, but we are called at the tail end of the process after they have told government everything that they need, and what appears is a small two-line. We consulted civil society, but nothing we ever say ever finds its way there. Then, as a result, the Commission has been moved by the stories of African who have, I don't know whether they are victims, but they continue to survive, people who have lost their relatives, people who have lost pregnancies. So when we say futures, it is not removed. It is present future that are that personal. And based on that particular background, we note that IMF and World Bank are part of the biggest violators of human rights. If we were to calculate the number of people who are dying because of fiscal consolidation and austerity measures, most probably they would equate the number of people who have died from genocides. Whenever genocides happen, commissions of inquiries are quickly commissioned. People run to the International Criminal Court. Where do we run to when the IMF and the World Bank met economic violence on the people of Kenya, on the people of Malawi, on the people of Nigeria, on the people of Burkina Faso, and many other all African countries. We have nowhere to run. For that reason, we came for this particular commission of inquiry, and based on what has been submitted in evidence, we've made 4 key findings. First, that the debt contracts and the clauses that are contained in those particular debt contracts with the IMF and the World Bank, whether they are listed in development and policy program initiatives, whether they are technical assistance. They take away the sovereignty of the African people. They negate the obligation of state to move forward and progress implementation of socio-economic and cultural rights. They kill internal democracy, including fiscal constitutionalism, where for every money that is used, we need to vote on it because they dictate the terms that are to be used. The democracy gets even worse because any decisions, any reforms that are to be made are based on a vote. The entire African continent has 7% of the vote. If you have ever heard of something that is not a democracy, it is an extraction. It is how the World Bank and the IMF is therefore constituted. Then we've also made a finding that they undermine development because everything they have done since the first African state, Ghana, gained its independence is to make sure that there are programs that make us not move forward, not have industries, not strengthen our currency. If anything, they devalue our currency. And this commission of inquiry had people who dared to say that leaders, African bold leaders, who dared go against the IMF, the World Bank, or the global financial institutions were assassinated. That continues to date. It has to stop. I don't think they can assassinate all of us. And so moving forward, we are starting a path of redefining what an African fund would look like, an African financial system would look like, what participation of the people would look like. What if we implemented the Pan-African vision, the Pan-African philosophy, once and for all, and charted our own path, and indeed cease becoming the net creditor of the world? There comes a time when, with all the wealth in Africa, we can actually be the rule makers and be the ones who dictate the terms of the people who have extracted from us for so long. So more courage and strength and action to the people of Africa.
Why is it that an African child is struggling in the same global financing system than any other children in the other parts of the world? I am Rachel Yankungluwe, 17 years of age, from Malawi. It is with a great concern that the debts from International Monetary Fund and World Bank, they are coming in, they are accompanied with unfavorable conditions and policies that, when adopted, they are prioritized at the expense of Africans, and that's centering children. Why is it that Africans are struggling more with poverty while we are having the same debts from the same financing system? Why is it that an African child is failing to access quality education and quality health care while we are living in the same global financing system? This is because the International Monetary Fund and World Bank have had their interest first and not thinking about Africans, and not thinking about the future of African children, and not thinking about the youth of African continent. It is with a great concern that our governments in Africa are being forced to prioritize creditors and to prioritize debt servicing over the important social protection services that the countries have to prioritize. It is with great concern that Africa Vision 2063, it is slowly going down and it is slowly shallowing because our government are failing to finance important services, because our governments are failing to give Africans what they need. It is with great concern that we're seeing leaders, our leaders who are advocating for change, being killed, being detained in prison, while us children are seeing. It is with great concern and sadness that an African child is failing to voice out because of the tools that have been impressed. So these huge external debts are affecting Africans, and not only Africans, they're affecting the child in the soil of Africa. Therefore, the children of Africa are struggling in the same poverty since the 1990s, while we are being granted with debts to support us. Why is it that we are failing to move out from those cages of poverty while we have the debts? It is because this IMF and World Bank, they are protecting their Western industries over our industries. They are protecting they're using African as their safe place, as their safe haven to extract our resources. Where do we think our African children are going to live? Where do we think our African youth are going to get those minerals to support themselves? It is because they are being used as neo-colonialists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The findings today of this Commission of Inquiry has been indicated, Africa. And I hope that they can move it on to a proper tribunal with IMF present so that they can exchange, we can face Africa together. They need to answer to Africans. And so with no missing words, we are calling for reparation across the sub-region of Africa. The conditionalities are a deliberate and planned systematic steps to recolonize Africa. Once Africans were taken from the shores of Africa, able-bodied men and women, young and old, were taken from Africa. Through the continent, from different places, from Tanzania, from all the west coast of Africa, and taken to Europe and America, from Nigeria, is it from Mombasa or whichever corner of Africa, the blacks were taken from our coast. It was not the design for Africans. Many of them died in the seas, being transported and dumped, their bodies thrown overboard. With the neglect of the social sector, which is a condition of the IMF and World Bank, many of our citizens have no jobs, they have nowhere to turn to. We have so many graduates, and they are now dying again. You're hearing the boat capsizing because they are trying to go to Europe to the very beginning. So Africans are dying again. Those who have reached other sides, you find them to different countries, they are being rejected, they are being turned over. Except those who qualify, the doctors, nurses, the teachers who are useful to them. You never hear about their migration. But those they don't need, they don't want them. And so Africans, again, find themselves at the receiving end. We're therefore calling that the dignity of Africa has been shredded, finally by the IMF and the World Bank. And so today, we are calling, because they're calling for reparation. The lack of investment in education, for example, is to ensure that the human capital is depleted. Is to weaken the human capital of all African nations, because if you don't educate people, if you are, enriching and building the capacity, investing in the human capital, means your economy has a future. But when you remove that, we have so many students today across different universities in Africa. Those who have gone to even 100 level the first year can't go to the second year. Those who have gone to second year can't go to the third year because they do not have money to carry on. when you have many of them falling below the poverty line. And so, I want to say well done to Africa. I want to say well done to Afrodad and all the partners for how they have brought us in here today. I want to commend their effort. Let the effort not be stopped. I want to ask Africa, we also want to demand accountability from the African Union, our leaders in the African Union. You know, there's a lot of corruption in our countries across board, across wherever IMF and the World Bank has walked through. In order to further subjugate, they capture the elite, the political elite, and what we have today. But I do believe that we still have some Africans who are ready to fight. We still have some decent people. Keep your dignity, because for Africa, the future is bright. But again, we have to learn to be able to work together. We have to bring up unity. We're calling for dedicated leaders. It is Nelson Mandela who once said that a heart that can hate with intensity can also love with the same intensity when they are converted. And so we are calling that all those who have gone astray, you better come back, because all of us, we are all on a death row, isn't it? There is nothing you are taking from this world. So the primitive accumulation of wealth that you are doing today, it will be over tomorrow, because you are not taking anything out of this world. The world belongs to God. And so you need to turn around yourself and write your history. Be a solid African by recommitting your life to, and dedicating it to Africa as a nation. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll summarize in 3 points what I believe the proceedings over these past 2 days have revealed for us. First is the importance of having this commission of inquiry. Second is the broken global financial architecture, in particular the global debt architecture. And third is the need for strong debt governance. Now, when we look at the importance of the commission of inquiry, because some of the reasons have already been touched on, I'll touch on a few different ones. First, this commission of inquiry was important to delve into the allegations that were alleged against the IMF and the World Bank. Second, it highlights 2 key international legal voids. One is that on a defined international legal forum for adjudication of sovereign debt disputes. So we sought to emulate what such a forum could look like. Second is the international legal void on legislation on sovereign debts. To address this, we have the upcoming Financing for Development process, which is expected to lead to an intergovernmental process that leads to the establishment of a United Nations Framework Convention on Sovereign Debt. And third is legal immunity. We also wanted to see how to navigate the legal immunity that is granted to the IMF and the different branches of the World Bank through their articles of agreement. Now, moving on to my second main point, the global financial architecture, and in particular, the global debt governance, global debt architecture. Now, at Afrodad, we have the Harare Declaration, which points out that current debt relief and restructuring initiatives are not adequate. We've seen the Heavily Indebted Poor Countries Initiative, we've seen the Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative, and more recently, the G20 Common Framework. Despite the existence of all of these initiatives, debt dependency and debt cycles still continue to persist. Why? It raises the question, it raises the point that there is a larger systemic issue to be addressed. So the IMF and the World Bank have been promoting fiscal consolidation and creditor-centric lending practices. So this is a new form of neocolonialism. Global decision-making is also unbalanced. For example, the voting power, if we look at the IMF's voting power, the whole continent holds less than 10% of the voting share. While you'll see one country, for example, developed country holding, for example, 16%. And this becomes a problem because it takes away from a democratic debt governance architecture. So instead of having one country, one vote, we are allocated voting powers which were set in 1944. Next is human rights and development. So this has an implication on our human rights and development, because as Professor Waris says, rights require resources. If we do not have the resources, we cannot finance our rights, especially socio-economic rights. Finally, I'll connect this to debt governance, especially at national level. So reforming the global debt architecture also trickles down to our national levels. In order to strengthen national legislation, which is also provided for in the Harare Declaration, we looked at 4 different countries' legal frameworks on debt, the legal and institutional frameworks. So we looked at Ethiopia, Chad, Malawi, and Ghana. And we did a comparative analysis highlighting trends such as lack of transparency, accountability which is not enforced, various other provisions which highlight that while we are doing the work even at global level, we need to bring that work down to reforming legal frameworks even at national level. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado e agradecer a todos que estão aqui presentes por essa oportunidade de mais partilharmos ponto de vista, conclusões e aquilo que sentimos ao longo desse espaço da Comissão Africana de Inquérito, que nós intitulamos Tribunal Internacional dos Povos de África. Angola, sendo um país com subsolo rico e solo rico em termos de minérios, entendemos que Angola, possuidor de cerca de 35 minérios mais importantes dos 45 do mercado mundial, mas o seu povo continua a viver por uma refeição de $1,50 por dia. Por essa razão, durante esta sessão, nós entendemos que o nosso foco mais crítico é exatamente nas relações com o Fundo Monetário Internacional, onde nos apercebemos que existe uma questão que podemos chamar de contexto histórico e estrutural. A herança dos modelos econômicos que tratamos que são colonial extrativista em estruturas internas e robustas. Esses desafios foram aproveitados enquanto os países estão nas guerras, obrigados a buscar este financiamento, mas em contrapartida desequilibrou totalmente os interesses dos povos locais. Os acordos do FMI, na verdade, no seu grande condicionalismo, levou vários momentos o desequilíbrio da soberania dos países, isto é, através das altas taxas de juros e sobretaxas, ao mesmo tempo que leva esses países, Angola e outros países da África, pagarem, na verdade, ou priorizar o pagamento dos credores em detrimento daquilo que devia ser as condições sobre direitos econômicos, sociais e culturais do seu povo e encontrando pouca flexibilidade e também pouco entendimento entre o povo e os governantes. Nós encontramos que há um impacto socioeconômico do endividamento muito forte. A redução dos investimentos nas questões de saúde, educação, onde vimos que ao longo desse inquérito entendemos que há escolas que se fecham, há médicos sem função, há hospitais sem equipamento e inclusive mulheres que moram nas portas dos hospitais porque não há medicamento, não há médico. E por outro, médicos formados preferem abrir seus postos médicos e resumir a saúde pública em receitas. É consultada o doente, o paciente, mas é dada a receita, ou é consultado o doente, mas é enviado para os centros médicos privados cujos donos são exatamente os médicos preparados pelo sistema de saúde pública. Isto, na verdade, ficou claro que esta questão nos traz numa visão diferente de nós considerarmos esse espaço do Tribunal Africano para os povos, do Tribunal Internacional dos Povos Africanos como um espaço legítimo para denunciar as injustiças financeiras e estruturais impostas aos países africanos. Os países africanos, inclusive Angola, nos posicionamos a favor de uma reparação econômica internacional e de um novo pacto financeiro global que respeite a soberania dos povos africanos e promova o desenvolvimento inclusivo e sustentável. Para os próprios países, há necessidade de não recorrer apenas na questão de cancelamento de dívidas já obtidas, mas precisamos o cancelamento de leis que nos leva a se endividar para nós postarmos naquilo que são os nossos próprios recursos, formando o nosso povo, explorando os nossos recursos e deixarmos de vender os nossos recursos de maneira bruta. Temos que agregar valor nisso. Assim sendo, esse espaço é legítimo para nós fazermos elevar a nossa voz e sermos ouvidos e também sermos reposta a nossa dignidade. Obrigado.
My name is Mavuto Bamusi, a civil society activist, economic justice campaigner in Malawi. The hosts of this, I would say, a successful International African People's Tribunal. And I say that this has been a successful commission of inquiry because of the few issues that I'm going to talk about which concern Malawi. To begin with, the IMF and the World Bank have been in existence in Malawi for over close to 60 years. Actually, since Malawi got independence in 1964, and then 1965, 1966, the IMF and the World Bank consolidated their foothold in Malawi. But the question which the Malawian people and us as civil society activists ask and continue to ask is, why is underdevelopment perpetuating while these institutions, these Bretton Woods institutions, still cling to have their foothold in Malawi? Why is poverty still deepening and it continues to widen in Malawi? Yet for over 60 years, we have the IMF and the World Bank operating their offices in the capital, Lilongwe. Let me just give you a picture. Currently, as we speak, and if we are to use the income poverty line of $3 a day, then we are talking about 80% of Malawians sliding into poverty immediately. And this is compounded by the high cost of living, which Malawians have experienced for the past 2 to 3 years. And as I speak right now, Malawians are queuing on the pump stations, on the fuel stations, just to get petrol. It can take 1, 2 days, 3 days, sometimes spending the nights on fuel stations. And at the same time, Malawians are literally scrambling for such basic commodities as sugar. And that is the extent of poverty in Malawi. And to a high extent, this has been contributed by the devaluation policies which the IMF has insisted that Malawi should undertake. Again, let me give you a snapshot. In the year 2022, the IMF advised Malawi government to devalue its currency by 25%. And that happened almost as if the IMF is advising Malawi to do that at gunpoint. And then, as if that is not enough, in the year 2023, another devaluation happened. And actually, this is one of the highest rates of devaluation at 44%. And then that is on top of the 22% devaluation of the previous year in 2022. And then in between, Malawians are shouldering what we are calling secret devaluations, hidden devaluations that are happening almost on a month-to-month basis, such that as we speak right now, the cumulative devaluation that Malawians have experienced over the past 3 years alone is slightly over 75%. Now, can you therefore imagine, if you were to stand in the shoes of an ordinary Malawian, the children, some of whom are represented by my side here, Rachel has lamented very pathetic scenarios, very pathetic situations that children are going through. So the degree of child poverty, all this we argue and we observe that they have been impacted upon by the impoverishing policies of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And this is again on the background that in the year 1982-1983, Malawi was forced, literally forced, to embrace structural adjustment programs. A few years down the line, we saw massive privatization of state-owned enterprises. 65 state-owned enterprises were privatized within a space of 10 years, from 1996 to 2006. And guess what? What Malawians were promised that this was going to result into economic efficiency and economic growth did not happen, has not happened to date. What was promised by the World Bank and the IMF, that privatization was going to generate jobs, did not happen and has not happened. As a result, privatization has led to the deindustrialization of our economy. And then, as I sum up, we have the same poor people who are now saddled with a heavy debt burden. Malawi's debt now is over 80% of gross domestic product. And actually one would wonder and ask, how are people surviving? How are Malawians surviving? So the question of surviving, the question of survival does not even exist in a country like Malawi. So the youths, children, women, and literally all Malawians are being affected. Let me also give you another very sad statistic currently in terms of hunger. And we say that Malawi is an agro-based economy, is an agricultural economy. Yet this is a country that is begging for food year in, year out. Of the population of close to 20 million Malawians, as I speak, 6.8 Malawians are on the brink of starvation. And these are official figures, these are official statistics. The question again is, where is the IMF? Where is the World Bank? They are still peddling the same impoverishing, starving policies. And it is almost as if the World Bank and the IMF are subjecting Malawians to death by starvation through their bad policies. So therefore, through this tribunal, through this commission of inquiry, and thanks to our partners in the region, in Africa. We, the people of Malawi, demand accountability from the IMF and the World Bank. We demand immediate reforms in the IMF and the World Bank. We demand an end to implementation of the global financial system that is simply enriching the already rich and creating more poverty for the already poor, as well as inequality. Lastly, on 16 September this year, 2025, Malawians are going to the polls. And when that happens, our plea and demand as the people of Malawi, and I believe in solidarity with the people of Africa, is that the election in Malawi must be an issue-based election where political leaders must make campaign promises towards debt cancellation. We are expecting nothing short of that political leaders must make campaign promises towards reformation of the IMF and the World Bank. We, the people of Malawi, are thankful to the African civil society and the peoples of Africa for allowing us to host this tribunal, this very, very important commission of inquiry. And we hope and we look forward to the fruits of this particular commission of inquiry, which should be about generating development, generating jobs, lifting millions of Malawians and Africans out of poverty. But that is premised on the expectation that the IMF and the World Bank need to reform. If they cannot reform, they have their offices in Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi. We would ask them to pack up and go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to open the floor for a few questions. Any question? I have one question online. Anyone in the room who wants? Yes, please, introduce yourself and then ask the question. And specify if there's someone who you would like to answer your question.
I can go? All right, my name is Kingsley Jasi from Times Group. Talking of reforms, would you be specific on what areas of reforms would you would expect these institutions to do, and to what level of impact to Malawi and Africa as a whole? What reform areas would you cite? And the second question is, how do you balance now in holding IMF and World Bank to account with local governance issues, economic management issues that we also see African countries suffering from? How do you balance that? While you're holding these institutions to account, what about the local authorities? What about leaders in Africa? How do you intend to balance up on those? Thank you.
Diana, would you want to take that?
Thank you very much for your question. I think that's also the same question that has been asked online. I want to make it very clear. I don't think IMF and World Bank are capable of reform. These are 1944 institutions established when majority of the continent was under colonial rule. Why do we have these institutions making policies for us? They need to be dismantled, and we've heard Madame Ene also talk about that. They should not exist. We should have them replaced completely with an institution that understands the socio-economic, fiscal governance and cultural concerns and realities of the continent. Okay? So in terms of the alternatives, in terms of thinking about where do we go next from this, replace the IMF and the World Bank, replace it with a credible institution. Some of this work is already taking place. In Nairobi, there has been the House of Fiscal Wisdom that has been established that is looking towards the creation of a commission on financing development. That commission is going to come up with strategic ways in which to build an organization that truly represents, a fiscally legitimate institution that's going to provide credit, and that credit should actually be interest-free. I want to bring to the attention a document that was shared with me by my colleague who lives in Mauritius, Mr. Yash Saoti. He shared with me a recent document whereby the British actually apologized to the Mauritian government, having colonized a specific island of Mauritius for a number of years, the Chagos Island. And in that particular treaty, they have expressly said that we realize the problems that we posed in this particular island because of a colonial domination of the state, and because we are apologetic, we want to now make reparations. That same logic should be applied to IMF and World Bank. So before they're dismantled, let them apologize, and in that apology, let them come up with amends. And those amends, you've heard my panel also speak about this, is to come up with reparations. And the best form of reparation is to write off all debts, completely all debts. There's no moratorium that we want on any debt. Write off those debts, and then we move forward from that. So that's my response to you for now. I also want to bring it to the attention of ourselves here, and also of those online who are listening. There are different alternatives to getting credit without the exorbitant interest rates that we are seeing given to us by the IMF, the World Bank, and other creditors in the form of governments, which I will not mention right now. We need to start thinking about sukuk, which is the Islamic form of financial instruments that are designed as bonds. And these generate enough value for economic activity without interest. And I think that is what has been suffocating the continent, the high interest rates. So that's my response for now. I'll wait for my other panelists to give further responses on the same. Thank you.
I just want to bring to us again, that in October 15th, about October 15th, 1996, a deputy director of IMF apologized to Africans that the policies that they introduced on the structural adjustment program and the austerity measure did not work, that it failed. And when African economists were telling them that those policies will not work, because you can't come from somewhere and bring ideas that you have no idea about the roots of that environment. You have no environmental impact, you have no study and all of that, and you introduce this. We knew it would fail. All of the industries that Nigeria, or is it Cameroon, is it Tanzania or Malawi had in the early 80s, before the introduction of the structural adjustment program, almost all of the industries are closing down. Up till last week, more industries are still closing down. In the inquiry yesterday, it was mentioned just the textile industry that produce what I have, because when you have industries, the workforce, you can consume, you can just take in the manpower that you have. We don't have them anymore. From 125 to 20. And every day they are still closing down. All of the industries are packing up and going, when other sectors are booming. So the devaluation of the currency did not work. They say devalue your economy, your currency, so that more industries will come in. But what we are having is more industries are packing. They are telling you to, privatize your energy sector. They privatize. The privates, the hands of the privates, has never generated anything. And so how come you come with policies from outside there, but the governments of Europe, the governments of America, and all of them, they never neglect social protection. Those who are not working are covered. But we are having young Africans that want to go and read. They don't want to read. Nobody has, where you now squeeze the hell out of us. Because when you are looking at, if I pay tax, like Europe, 30 to 40% of your tax is paid. You are no longer responsible for your health care. You are no longer responsible for your, for education. But what we are having today is that you pay all of that and you are still squeezed. And then we have the entire social sector being destroyed. That's what they have done. They have destroyed the the hospitals, the educational sector. When I went to the university, I studied with people who came in from Europe to study in Nigeria. But today, many of our politicians, what we are talking about, many of our politicians are sending their children abroad instead of studying, within the environment and all of that. So we know what we are talking about, and I'm happy that this is happening at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So have your headphones ready?
I think that there was a question to do with the responsibility of local leaders, local politicians, and what have you. And we wish to say, without missing words, that this tribunal, this commission of inquiry, was not here to condone the corrupt behavior of African presidents, African leaders, and other politicians. And we know that some of the debt that has been contracted has been spent on corrupt projects, on projects that have been processed through corrupt means. You talk about infrastructure projects, construction of roads, construction of dams, railways. All these are under machinations of bribery, corruption, embezzlement, and what have you. So the debt cancellation, and we wish to say this sternly, that the debt cancellation campaign is not a trump card for politicians to now begin using the freed resources from debt cancellation in any manners so corrupt. So there is need to stick to public finance management systems, adhere to rule of law, but most importantly, make sure that there is fiscal discipline, and that is on the part of African leaders themselves.
Thank you. There's a question? Okay, proceed.
Thank you. I'd just like to add to that, on the aspect of the responsibility of local leaders, and as you may also talking about members of parliament and our government officials, one thing that they can do is reform legislative frameworks. We have seen from the presentations today even that there are gaps that we can reform within our legislative frameworks at national level. So even as we talk about reforming or doing away completely with the IMF and the World Bank, we also have to look at our national level frameworks. So what we can do at the national level, for example, members of parliament can institute legal reforms. They can work with ministries of finance, specifically when it comes to public finance management laws and public debt management laws. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is in French. Yes, Joseph.
Merci de m'avoir accordé la parole, Howard. J'ai deux ou trois petites questions. Mais j'aimerais quand même avant faire une motion. Je ne sais pas si vous permettez. I can? Yes. Alors, j'aimerais dire ceci. Quand nous posons des questions, je souhaiterais que ce soit une personne ou qui, s'il sera complété, que ce soit par 2 ou 3 personnes maximum. S'il faut à chaque question faire le tour de table, le tour de table, ça sera, on risque de passer la nuit ici. Bon, je ne sais pas, c'était juste ce que j'avais en tête. Parce que si à chaque question, on fait le tour de table, nous avons plusieurs journalistes ici, ça peut nous prendre plus de 2-3 heures. C'était ça ma requête. Maintenant, je passe aux questions. Excusez-moi avec mon nez. J'allais dire que depuis les publications que j'ai faites il y a quelques jours pour annoncer cette commission, j'ai reçu beaucoup de questions de mes lecteurs sur cette commission. Beaucoup ou nombreux, la plupart d'entre eux ne comprennent pas c'est quoi cette commission. Qu'est-ce que c'est réellement et quel est son rôle? Qu'est-ce que ça changera dans les futurs, cette commission d'enquête? Ma question est de savoir, que faites-vous maintenant pour que ce processus ne reste pas réservé à un cercle militant ou intellectuel, mais soit réellement compris par toutes ces personnes ou la population qui posent ces différentes questions, pour qu'ils comprennent un peu c'est quoi cette commission. Et puis, quelle garantie avez-vous que ces conclusions ne resteront pas symboliques? Qui le portera après? On a fait 2 jours de travaux, il y a eu des recommandations, mais qui le portera auprès de ces institutions-là, le Fonds monétaire international, la Banque mondiale aussi et autres, pour avoir finalement gain de cause? Voilà mes 2 questions.
Thank you very much for that question. One, why we have this commission is to already simulate and illustrate to the people of Africa what is possible. Okay? Because unless we get to the point of imagining what economic liberation, economic freedom, true independence of African state would look like, we will never even start to take the steps that are required for that true liberation to take place. So first, this commission is to signal to the African Union, to the heads of state, to the IMF, to the World Bank, and to all those delegates who are going for the FFD conference, that the African people can see the injustice that has been going on since during the colonial period to date. And we've just started the journey of imagining what that future would be. Part of it would be, one, that the IMF and the World Bank immediately as part of reparations to Africa cancel their debt. They change their structure before finally they are dismantled to ensure that African states have an equal voice as all other states. Then we must also usher the journey that the African Union, with courage, must begin to walk. And linked to the question that was asked earlier, we are also in this problem because of our bad leadership and governance. The few states that have managed to say no to SAPs, to austerity measures, and have been lucky not to be assassinated, have moved forward. Why are our leaders easily co-opted? It is because we have leaders who care about power and not the people of Africa. The change of our economic systems is very linked to change of our democratic systems. As long as we continue to vote for the richest people on African continent, they get into power to protect their individual wealth and not the sovereign wealth of the country. So alongside this, and together with the overall Harare Declaration, we will continue to create steps and actions that people in civil society, students, scholars, journalists, advocates can already start taking steps. I am aware from this process, there are countries that already will go and sue the IMF and the World Bank for various violations. There are ongoing processes of, say, IMF and World Bank-led governance diagnostic performance review that are being contested by ordinary people. So it is a journey that we are starting to start creating what ought to be. That is how we got the constitutive charter of the African Union. It is surely how we can get our way forward when it comes to economic liberation in Africa.
Meu nome é Berta Madima, de Moçambique. A minha questão vai para o Dr. Manuel. Yes. Dr. Manuel esteve aqui a falar da situação da dívida em Angola e aquelas que são as consequências para o país. Eu gostava de saber, primeiro, se desenha o mesmo cenário para todos os PALOP e, se sim, se há alguma política que foi aqui sugerida que pode ser diretamente implementada nos PALOP para o nosso benefício. Obrigada.
Ok, muito obrigado. Como podia dizer que na vez passada não me pronunciei do nome, deixa aproveitar que sou Manuel Pembele Fulutoma, trabalho para a Jureca, Associação Juvenil para o Desenvolvimento Comunitário de Angola, e também para a Rede de Cidadão Angolano para a questão da dívida pública. A situação que coloca é exatamente pertinente. Sabes que a questão do endividamento público angolano não afeta apenas Angola, afeta também os países aliados do ponto de vista da política linguística, da política econômica e também da política social. Ao longo deste tribunal, nós entendemos que, para além da política da FMI, que na verdade impõe, ou ao emprestar, ele impõe algumas regras estruturais e regras essas que acabam de inibir a implementação da soberania do país, levando os governos africanos a priorizar os credores do que os direitos econômicos e sociais, e assim que chegamos à conclusão de que, primeiro, a questão da reforma política do FMI é importante, porque se observar muito bem, desde 1944, a FMI, Banco Mundial, são instituições que surgiram na ordem da questão da Guerra Mundial. Mas será que desde aquela altura até aqui os efeitos da Guerra Mundial continuam a ter grandes percentagens ou não? Se não, é necessário encontrarmos essa formulação, porque eles, em vez de buscar a sustentabilidade econômica dos países do mundo, eles ali estão a desequilibrar praticamente esta sustentabilidade econômica. Por essa razão, precisamos de desenvolver, primeiramente, políticas de auditoria cidadã. O exemplo de Moçambique é um elemento fundamental que deve ir a todos os PALOPs, no sentido de fazer participar a população, e assim estaríamos também descobrir aqueles que são dívidas odiosas, que na verdade são dívidas que estão no parâmetro mais fora. A outra questão é a questão de, para além dos governos africanos pedirem a questão de cancelamento ou moratória nas suas dívidas, mas avançamos no cancelamento das políticas internas de endividamento, no sentido que os países africanos, cheios de minérios, optem praticamente nos seus recursos locais. Obrigado.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, I think we can close at this point, and I'll give this chance to Lydie to close for us.
Merci beaucoup de la parole qui m'est accordée encore ce soir. En tout cas, je suis très honorée. Mais qu'est-ce qu'il faut que je dise encore quand j'ai déjà suivi ce que les experts, les avocats ont évoqué ici, c'est presque le même problème. Pour les journalistes, moi c'est Lydie, je viens de la République démocratique du Congo. Par rapport aux politiques imposées par le FMI et la Banque mondiale, ce que je peux dire, je prends le contexte de mon pays, ce sont des politiques en tout cas qui ont plus tuer le secteur de la santé et de l'éducation. Je vais m'attarder sur le secteur de la santé. En République démocratique du Congo, les hôpitaux publics ressemblent à un mouroir aujourd'hui. Je l'ai évoqué hier, 80% des Congolais se soignent à leurs propres frais. Tout simplement parce que les hôpitaux ne bénéficient plus des financements publics. Lorsque vous vous retrouvez dans un hôpital public, vous ne comptez pas aux médicaments, les plateaux techniques vétustes. Même pour un simple examen, vous devez aller chercher dans des privés, imaginez-vous. Et je l'ai évoqué peut-être pour les journalistes, moi j'ai été victime, j'ai parlé de ça ici, en un mot. Moi j'ai perdu mon père dans un hôpital public, lui-même personnel d'une institution publique, qui a été hospitalisé, mais tellement que les médecins chaque trimestre sont en grève pour réclamer l'amélioration des salaires, l'amélioration des conditions de travail. On ne peut pas se retrouver dans des conditions où il n'y avait pas un médecin disponible. Hier, peut-être, je n'ai pas évoqué certains détails. Imaginez-vous pour avoir quelques minutes un médecin aux côtés de papa, il fallait donner de l'argent à ces médecins. Parce qu'il a dit, lui-même souffre, il n'est pas payé, pourtant il est fonctionnaire de l'État. Voyez-vous jusqu'où cette austérité tue en silence. Le secteur de l'éducation, n'en parlons pas. Je prends le secteur de l'enseignement supérieur. En 2022, il y a des rapports sur ça. 1,7% du budget a été accordé au secteur de l'enseignement supérieur. On s'attend à quoi dans l'avenir? Aujourd'hui, moi je pense que cette lutte ici avec la commission d'enquête doit être une occasion pour nous tous de saisir cette opportunité, de s'engager pour cette cause. Que ce soit également une responsabilité de vous, les journalistes, et de nous, les journalistes, pour que la voix soit portée plus haut. Parce que c'est une lutte qui commence, mais qui ne doit pas s'arrêter ici. En tout cas, pour dire un peu de mots, les impacts des politiques imposées par le programme d'ajustement structurel sont visibles et palpables. Alors il est temps qu'on s'unisse pour lutter contre ces fléaux qui est en train de tuer même l'avenir. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, and Viva Africa.